Hopefully Bryn can hear me.
Gotcha. Can you
Oh,
hear
okay,
me?
good. Yeah, okay, Bryn, you want to go ahead and kick us off and get started?
Yeah, we'll do. I'll be brief. I know folks want to get to the meat of the matter, but I know most of the folks recognize most of the names of folks on the call. But for those of you that don't know me, my name's Brent Hawes. I'm the relatively new director of BitNet, and very excited to be here and excited for us to be kicking off our solicitation for new project ideas for projects that can be done to help preserve and restore, of course, the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary, which is what our mission is. So, I do want to briefly mention or introduce, I should say, Michelle Felterman, who is on the line with us as well. She is was more recently hired than I, and is our new deputy director here. So, looking forward to getting to know everybody, those of you that we don't know, and working with you and making sure that we get the best suite of projects we possibly can for our 2026 work plan, so that we can get those projects on the ground and do good things in the estuary. So, Andrew, with that, I'll end there and turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully that all will cooperate for me. Hmm. All right, hopefully y'all can see it's a PowerPoint. Are y'all able to see that on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, good deal, good deal. All right, let me show. All right, with that, I am going to get started. Okay, we'll try to move through this presentation fairly efficiently, and then I'm going to move into the actual solicitation so that I'm going to just kind of walk through that, kind of hit the high points, and then address any questions that you all may have. So first of all, this presentation is our webinar on the BitNep Project Award Program and Action Plan Teams for the fiscal year 2026. And my name is Andrew Barron. I'm the Senior Scientist and Quality Assurance Manager for the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary Program. And this is my email address. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at that email address. So first, I'm going to cover an overview of BitNep. And just so we're all on the same page, the BitNep program area is all of the land between the Mississippi and Atchafalaya rivers. And just to give you some place you may recognize, this is where New Orleans is located. Morgan City would be over in this area, and Baton Rouge is over here. Thibodaux is right smack in the middle of that region. And again, that's our programmatic area. And so when we talk about where the projects that you're going to be submitting as part of your proposals, most of that work, unless it's like a general educational project, if it's an on-the-ground project, we want those projects taking place within this geographic area. So the NEPs were established in the 1990s. They're funded under EPA Clean Water Act, Section 320. And in order to be nominated as a member or one of the national estuary programs, it has to be deemed as an estuary of national significance. And so this map shows that the locations of all of the 28 national estuary programs. And you can see that there are a few across the Gulf Coast. There's 7 of them. And BitNep is one of 7 on the Gulf Coast. And so BitNep has an this is our implementation structure. And so we have a management conference. It functions kind of like a board committee that helps to guide the implementation of our comprehensive plan. And Bryn and me, the rest of us at BitNep that you think of as BitNep, we work in the program office, but BitNep's much larger than that. We include the management conference, which is our stakeholder group, like I was just talking about. We also have our action plan teams. You're going to be hearing more about that as we go through this presentation. And then we also have a private foundation that allows us to accept private donations. This is an example or a list of the stakeholders that are on our management conference. Pretty much every stakeholder you could think of that would be within this region, within the southeastern Louisiana region, is probably represented on our management conference. And this is a photograph from a few years ago, but it's a photograph of members of the management conference. They're actually real people who sit on that committee to help guide the program office in implementing the CCMP. So how does BitNep do restoration? How do we go about doing restoration? Because we are an organization dedicated to the restoration of the Barataria-Terrebonne National Estuary. So we receive funding through Section 320 of the Clean Water Act, as well as BIL funds, at least for the next few years. And these funds are administered by EPA. And then we use our Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan. That's what the CCMP stands for. That is our blueprint for how we do the implementation. So what is a CCMP? It it is a comprehensive conservation and management plan, and it consists of 45 action plans, or they're basically tasks to how to go about restoring the estuary. And so these action plans are implemented with projects. And so where do those projects come from? Those are projects that you guys would submit to us, okay? So then the CCMP, this is my flow diagram kind of showing how that all works together. So the CCMP consists of action plans, which are implemented with projects that are compiled into annual work plans every year. So think of the work plan as a giant proposal, made up of a bunch of other proposals. Okay, and we submit that to EPA every year. EPA ultimately will accept it, and then we work from that work plan, that annual work plan, to implement the overall larger plan, which is the CCMP. So where do projects come from? So BitNep projects are crowdsourced from the public. That's one way of thinking about it. Anyone can submit projects. But of course, as you all know, they have to be able to, in reality, be able to implement those projects that they are proposing. So we're not just looking for just random ideas. Oh, you know what you should be doing? You should be doing this. No, we're looking for actual projects that have been well thought out, that have a budget, and have a person who's going to be, or an entity that's going to be implementing that work. Okay, so our strategy of work is the next topic. And we're going to talk about an overview of BitNep and the CCMP action plans. So we have our CCMP divided into four major divisions. And so the first one is water quality. And this is a list of all of the action plans that are under the water quality division of the CCMP. So examples of that would be, like EM8, EM9. So pollutant identification and assessment, all and produced water, spill prevention and early detection, and so on and so forth. The next major division is biological resources. And this is really focused on native species. And this one actually has only one action plan that it works from, and that is EM15, protection and enhancement of native biological resources. And then the next action plan division, and you can see that for each of these major divisions of the CCMP, that also follows our action plan teams. So this next action plan division is biological resources, and it focuses on invasive species. And that's EM16, reduction of impacts from invasive species. And then the last division, major division, is what we call our community engagement for short, but it's education, outreach, community engagement, and marine debris. But we, like I said, for shorthand, we refer to that one as community engagement. Um, and so that one has a number of action plans that falls within this major division. Now, if you're paying close attention, you may have noticed that, hey, Andrew, you didn't list all of the action plans. This is not a full comprehensive list of all the action plans that are within our CCMP. That is true, but these are the action plans that we are implementing most of our projects from over time. So it's including those, but it's not limited to those. Okay. All right. So proposals and for proposal costs and the time that you would require to implement your specific proposal. So if you are submitting a proposal that would be under the Clean Water Act, Section 320 funds, your project cost range is going to be, submit a project between $20,000 and basically $100,000. That's your cost range. So these are things that you should consider when you are submitting your project ideas as part of the solicitation. And your project duration, if you're going to submit for a project under the 320 funds, it would be a 2-year project. So these are things we have to tell you up front so that you have to, you have to take that into consideration when you're submitting your proposals. Okay. If you're going to submit a project that's going to be for more funding, you're looking to do more things, uh, and your project cost range is going to be between $100,000 and $300,000, and that's going to be a project that you would be considering for BIL funding. Okay. And some of this might be kind of unclear right now, but hopefully it'll become a little more clear as we go through this webinar. And then for BIL funded projects, your project duration is going to be 4 years. So again, you need to take that into account when you're designing your project. So some of the general issues, uh, project format is going to be provided in the solicitation for project ideas. Uh, Maybe most of you have already looked at the solicitation. The last few pages, I think it starts on page 8 or page 9, that is the format that you will be required to follow for your submittal. Okay. Submitters of proposals are automatically invited to present their presentation to an action plan team. I strongly encourage you to make the date when you're assigned for your action plan team and make your proposal to the action plan team. That's going to have a huge impact on the action plan team, and that's going to help. That can only help your proposal. Okay. And then when you're submitting your proposals, this is the email address that you submit your proposals to, proposals@bitnep.org. Okay. So make sure you make a note of that. That is in the project solicitation um, paperwork. So it's printed where we have our invitations. So this is the email that you submit your proposals to. So these are just some of the examples of project titles that we funded in previous work plans. Pilot testing and protocol development of apple snail suppression at Mandalay National Wildlife Refuge. Yeah, that one sounds kind of like a technical project where we might be collecting scientific data. So you'll learn as we go through this, there are some rules that you have to follow if you're submitting a project that collects scientific data. Okay. And if that's the case, you will have to or you're going to have to work on a quality assurance project plan. In fact, that should be your very first task in the list of tasks within your proposal. And again, this will become more evident as we work through this. Teach Wild, a lesson on marine debris. That's another example from H2O, a teacher workshop. And then development of chimney swift nesting/roosting towers and educational signage. All right, so those are examples. It's a kind of a little swath of various projects that we've done in the past that were funded through BitNep. Now, this goes back to that question about a quality assurance project plan or a QAPP. Will a QAPP be required? So what does QAPP stand for? It's a quality assurance project plan. It's basically a technical outline of what you plan to do as part of your scientific project. So it outlines how you're going to go about collecting data, where you're going to collect the data, what's your statistical design, how are you going to save that data? Okay, how are you going to back it up? Who all is involved in the data collection? All that kind of stuff. Okay, these are good questions to answer, not only for us, but for yourself, right? You want to have all that answered on the front end of your project before you collect any data at all. And that's why we require you to do a QAPP. So any project that collects any environmental data or scientific data is required to do a QAP or a QAPP. It's a safeguard for EPA's money, for taxpayer dollars, and it should be, I'm sorry, it should be the first task in your proposal. Um, and another note, okay, BitNep is not looking to fund basic scientific research, okay? And you're like, well, how do I know if I have basic scientific research? So the question that you should answer is, does my research, does my project answer management questions? Okay. Does it help with implementation of the CCMP? Is it an applied research? That's really going to help you decide whether it's basic scientific research or not. We're looking to fund applied research. All right. So as part of any project that is funded through the BIL funding source, we have some requirements for that. The BIL projects have to be able to identify where they're going to work in disadvantaged areas. All right. So there are 5 national indicators that are identified by EPA that indicate whether an area, geographic area, is a disadvantaged area. How do you know that? How do you know that? Well, we've provided that for you. You locate the area where you're going to be doing work and you can identify whether it's a disadvantaged area. All right. And you use the tool that is at this website. Now, it's not only just here in this presentation, this information is provided within the solicitation. All right, it's provided in the solicitation. So if you don't get it down from the web from this webinar, don't freak out. It's in the solicitation. So you'll be able to go and find it from there. But what you would do is you would go to this website, and then it gives you a map. All right, and so you can go and find the location of where you would want to do your project, and you can determine if that area is a disadvantaged area or not. For the purposes of your proposal, you just need to identify um, that area, locate the area where you're going to be doing your work, and indicate if it's a disadvantaged area. If it is, you make a note of why it's a disadvantaged area, like for what indicator, and then what you do is try to integrate that throughout your proposal. All right, so again, like I guess I just said what I said in the last bullet. So list that disadvantaged area and integrate that through the rest of your proposal. All right, so then now we're down to action plan team meetings. So all of the project proposal ideas, so your proposal is due on February 14th. Okay, so that is the drop dead date for when your proposals are due. Okay, and that date is, again, it's in the solicitation. So action plan team meetings will be held and planned after that date of February 14th. So we're going to receive in the proposals on February 14th. And then after that date, you're going to be contacted by one of the staff members at BitNep to schedule a meeting with you if you submitted a proposal. Okay. And then the project proposals prior to the action plan team meeting, project proposals will be mailed out to each of the respective action plan team meetings approximately 1 week prior to the meeting. So for each of the action plan teams that I was going through before, water quality, biological resources. So we have a member of the staff that is the team leader for each of those. So for water quality, I'll be the team leader for that one. For biological resources focused on native species, that's going to be co-led by Delana LeBlanc and Natalie Waters. For biological resources focused on invasive species, that's going to be Michael Massamy. And then for the community engagement action plan team, that's going to be Emily Bro. Presentations by the proposers of submitted project ideas for Section 320 RBI funding uh, will be made at each of these action plan team meetings. So each of the team leaders will reach out to the submitters of projects, and they will be invited to make a presentation to the action plan team uh, for the action plan team meeting. So members of action plan team meetings, members of the action plan teams will be invited to rank projects. So that's what we will need our action plan teams to do, to rank the projects that will be submitted as part of this process. And so the action plan team members uh, will submit the completed project ranking sheets to the team leaders. They'll submit a set of ranking sheets for both, for each the 320 projects list as well as the BIL candidate project list. Okay, so we're going to develop a work plan for each of the funding sources, one for the 320, one for the BIL. And so this kind of just kind of lays all that out. So for water quality, we're going to have two two rankings. Okay, one for the 320 funded projects, one for the BIL, and then that's going to be the same for each of the other action plan teams. And so the project approval or the project approval process, it starts with the action plan teams. So I'll just start at the beginning again. So on February 14th, we're going to receive all of the project proposals at BitNet. And then we're going to take all of those and we're going to divide them up into the four main action plan teams. Okay, that's based on what's being proposed. And so we're going to fit them into each of the action plan teams. And then they're going to go out to the action plan teams. Each proposer is going to make their presentations to the action plan teams. Then the action plan team is going to go through and carefully, carefully evaluate each proposal based on the ranking criteria that we have laid out in the solicitation. We're going to talk a little more about that a little later. Okay. And once the action plan team finishes their rankings, they're going to submit that to their team leaders. Then that's going to all go to the BitNet staff. So collectively, as a whole, BitNet staff is going to get together and meet, and then we're gonna put together a draft work plan. Excuse me. So we're going to develop a 320 and a BIL work plan based on those projects. And then that work plan, that draft work plan goes to the management conference for approval, and then finally to EPA for approval. All right, so the project approval process for work plans. Project ideas need to be included in work plans. I'm sorry, project ideas that are included in work plans will be notified through email. So if you're lucky enough to be included in a work plan, you'll be notified through email. Work plans generally are approved by EPA by October of each year. So all of the project proposals that are submitted this year and go through this lengthy process, and then if they get submitted into a work plan, and if finally that work plan gets approved by EPA, that usually would happen by October 1st of this coming year in 2025. Okay, so you should check with your BitNet staff action plan team leader, and absolutely do not begin any work without a fully executed contract. All right, good deal. So just a reminder, project ideas are due on February 14th, 2025. And remember, submit your project proposals only to this email address, proposals@bitnet.org. Are there any questions at this point before I move on? Any questions at all?
Andrew, I have a quick question. This is Jonathan. The determining factor whether we apply through BIL or through the 320 is just budget. It's not that one of them is looking for more projects on invasive species over the other one. So it's just that's pretty much why we would be in one of those categories is just the amount of money that the project would take to fund. Is that right?
Well, it's two criteria really. It's budget and time, the amount of time you would need to implement the project. Because
Gotcha.
320, you have 2 years,
Right.
okay, and then for BIL you have 4 years.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure thing. That's a good question. Thank you.
As
Any
far as the 5 things that make it eligible for BIL, I'm looking on the EJ Screen site and I'm seeing like a number of different things that all have subcategories. Is there a like a list of the 5 things somewhere?
No, I know that it's not that simple, but if you look within the EJ screen, um, you go through there and you can find the GIS layers for the 5 indicators that I have listed, and then you can go through them one at a time for your area of interest, and you can determine, go through. You only need one of those to qualify. So that's a good question. You only need one to qualify uh, for a disadvantaged area. Okay. So go through them one at a time systematically to determine if your area qualifies. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good deal. Yep. Good deal. All right, let me move on to the next. We're just gonna go through, let's see, where am I? That's the one I want. All right. Yeah, so now we're just going to go through the solicitation, and that might kind of drum up some more questions for you. And so if you notice, just the first page is kind of like just a welcome and memorandum and a letter to all interested parties, welcoming all of you to submit proposals if you're interested, and how to apply. That's the first place where you can see how you would submit your proposal. Okay, so you submit the proposals to the email I mentioned before, and this tells you how to format your proposal. Please do not name your project BitNet project. I know some of you are laughing out there, but we've had plenty of projects in the past that people just name them BitNet project, BitNet project. And so you want your project to have a unique name. Um, and we want for our purposes as well for your purposes. You don't want to get mixed up with anybody else's proposal, right? So let's continue down. Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead here. Okay, so the first part of it just kind of outlines the limits for each funding source for 320, your range of budget in your budget between 20,000 and basically 100,000. And remember, you have to plan for 2 years of work. Sorry, let me just make sure I'm not getting anything else here. And then for BIL funds, between 100,000 and 300,000. And of course, this is inconsistent with my proposal, my presentation. So just to be clear, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go back and change my presentation. Our solicitation is the final word. So I know in my presentation I had 4 years, and I missed it when I went through my presentation, and I said 4 years. The total amount of time you have to implement your BIL projects is 3 years. So I was incorrect when I made my presentation just now in my PowerPoint. It should be 3 years. So again, the solicitation paperwork is the final word on that. 3 years. Please plan accordingly. All right. So sorry about that. Okay. So to kind of go through, just after that, we talk about the EPA Justice 40 initiative, and your project for BIL should fit within one of the 5 national indicators. We discussed that already. And you go to the EJ screen to find if your project fits within one of those 5 national indicators. All right. Let's see. Yeah. So this next part here, this is kind of just letting you know that if if you're included in the work plan, your project is selected to be part of the work plan, and we're choosing to fund your project. you're going to have to enter into a contract or a subaward agreement with BITNEP / the Louisiana Universities Marine Consortium. Louisiana Universities Marine Consortium, BITNEP is part of LUMCON. LUMCON is our host agency. They are our fiscal agency, okay? So basically, they will be issuing a contract or a subaward agreement with your agency or with you if you're like a entrepreneur, that type of situation. So I wanted to just kind of highlight that right now. Another note is that, of course, you cannot begin any work until you have a fully executed contract or subaward agreement. Also, if you're doing any kind of scientific work, if you have a contract in place already and you're doing scientific work, you cannot begin sampling, you can't begin doing anything until you have a fully approved, EPA approved quality assurance project plan, like we discussed already. All right. And this is again highlighted again here in the solicitation. All right, let's continue moving down. So we talked about the award process. It goes through first the action plan team, and then BITNEP staff. Then the management conference has to approve the work plan that's compiled by the by the BITNEP staff. And then finally, EPA must approve draft work plans that are submitted. All right. So now I just wanted to get down to action plan teams. So for action plan teams, anyone who is interested in one of the four major divisions of the CCMP that I discussed before: biological resources, the native species, invasive species, water quality, and community engagement teams. We welcome anybody who is interested in that. All right. We would love to have your participation. We're always looking for partnership. And so if you're invited to be on an action plan team and you're going to be asked to rank each of the proposals that are submitted. So when you're ranking the proposals, we have specific criteria for you to use. Now, keep in mind, we're not doing scoring. We're not scoring projects. We're just going to rank them relative to one another for each of the action plan teams. Okay? Hopefully that's clear by now. And so we're going to ask you to consider each of these questions that are under, I think it's like 12 categories we have here under these criteria. So we have like 12 criteria that we're asking for you to consider. And if you look under each of the criteria, we have kind of like a yes or no question. That keeps it very simple. Does the project align with the goals and objectives of one or more of the CCMP action plans? That's probably going to be a very simple one to answer, right? So it's going to be yes or no, yes or no. So for each of these, to what extent does it, so for most of these, it's going to be a yes or no answer to each of these things we're asking you to consider. So we're trying to keep that pretty simple and straightforward. And of course, if you're having a question about any of these criteria, please feel free to ask your team leader for more explanation. So location, will it have a positive impact to the Barataria-Terrebonne estuarine system? Mainly, we're looking for projects that are going to be implemented within our program area. However, in some cases, we have like educational projects that have a broader impact. It's going to impact the BITNEP program area, but it's also going to impact other areas as well, But we're looking for positive impacts to the BitNEP program area. Positive impact to disadvantaged area. That's for BIL projects only. Does it have community support? Do you think this type of project will have community support? Time frame, methods, and technical feasibility. Is this project really doable in the amount of time that they're saying they're going to do it within, and for the amount of money they're going to do it for? Evaluation methods and outcomes. Does the project have a clear method and metrics for evaluating impact on effectiveness? This is especially true for like scientific projects, but it's generally true for all projects being submitted. Qualification of principal investigator. That is the person who's submitting the proposal. Financial capability. So the institution that's submitting the project, are they reasonably able to complete this project? Are they financially capable? So why are we asking that? Because what's going to happen in the agreement, the subaward, the contract, whatever type of agreement we have issued to you, you are going to be expected to front the work or the money that you're doing on the front end, and then you're going to be reimbursed for whatever work you do from LumCon. Okay. And some entities, some people are not capable of doing that. Okay. So we want you to consider that. Proposed budget. Is the budget reasonable for the work being proposed? Are there other partners in matching funds? Okay. So other partners in matching funds, that will have an influence on how the project is ranked. Again, this is on what we're going to be considering for ranking projects. That if this submitter has other partners in matching funds, it just shows that they've done other work towards this project idea. It just shows that it's more well thought out maybe than some of the other competitors. Excuse me. Cost benefit. Does this project seem like a cost-effective investment for BitNEP's limited resources? And then your overall impression. Okay, so yeah, so those are the criteria we're asking you to consider when you're going to be ranking the projects, the submitted projects, if you're serving on an action plan team. I know that we had some questions prior to today's webinar about kind of what goes into an action plan team. So the next section is just a list of acronyms. And then finally, on what page are we on here? I don't know if I can tell from my shared PDF here. But anyway, it's around page 8 or page 9. And this is the project submission form. So everything else above this, don't worry about submitting anything above this. You only need to submit what is here, okay? Here below, BitNEP project idea submission form. Note, submit only this form for your proposal, okay? The instructions are in italics. Once you put together your proposal, you can remove all of the instructions, all of the stuff that's in italics. Go through and, replace the italicized stuff, okay? We have specific instructions here, and we have some guidance under each of these sections. So you like your project name, hopefully that's self-explanatory. Performing organization, that is your agency. You're submitting the proposal, that's going to be your agency, your host agency. Other partners, okay, list any other organizations that might be participating directly or indirectly or secondarily as part of this project. Other funding, let's see, BitNEP funding request. This is only the funds you're requesting from BitNEP. Other probable contributions, these would be like matching funds or other funds that might be needed to complete the project, but you're not requesting that from BitNup, okay? Estimated total budget, that's the combined funds of BitNup funds and other probable contributions that are required to complete the total project. But remember, do not include your other probable contributions in your BitNup funding request. That's a very important point. We only want to know what you're requesting from BitNup here in this category under BitNup funding request. Point of contact is going to be the individual that's going to be working on the contract, on the project. That's you. And then you list your disadvantaged area, and we have some instructions here. That's the same stuff we've been through for the 5 national indicators and where to go to get that. Project location, that should be consistent with, if you're doing a big BIL funded project, it should be consistent with your previous section there. Project goals, project objectives, background. We are limiting these sections to 250 words. Keep that in mind. And we want just kind of a background. Why is this project being done? Why should anyone care? Okay, then description of the work. A general description of what's going to be done. Tasks and deliverables. Now we're getting in kind of the meat of everything here. We want you to go through and provide. So think about your overall project that you're trying to do. We want you to just to break it down into discrete steps of what each step that needs to be taken in order to complete the whole project. Okay, think about it that way. So under each task, we want you to break it down. You give you the title of the task, and then give a narrative that describes the task, what's going to happen in the task. Okay. Provide a timeline. That's the range of time for completion of the task. For example, months 3 through 4. Okay. You're going to host meetings or webinars or whatever you're going to do as part of your proposal. And then deliverables. These are the finite things that you're going to deliver, whether it's going to be, services or reports, photo documentation, meeting notes, monitoring reports, invoices, all of that. Include those as a list in your deliverables. They should be discrete things that you're asking for payment for, okay? And then the cost of doing that task. Now, if you're doing a scientific project, you will be required to complete an EPA approved QAPP as your very first task. Make sure you include that as your very first task, okay? And I've pretty much written that one for you. All you need to do is go in and provide your timeline. And again, I've already provided your deliverables. And the other thing you need to provide here is your cost. How much is it going to cost you to complete an EPA approved QAPP? And that's up to you to determine for your project. And so for the next one, I've provided you a template for, a generic task for you to complete. Okay. And then we go down to the next one, quarterly monitoring reports. You need to include this task. I've left the number blank. That's for you to fit into your list of tasks because I don't know how it's going to fit into your proposal, but you do have to have this as a task within your proposal and your list of tasks. Okay, so you're going to be required to do quarterly monitoring reports, to submit those quarterly monitoring reports to us. As part of those quarterly monitoring reports, you have to submit a quarterly invoice. Okay, So we need to track your work from quarter to quarter. Hopefully that is making sense to you. And I've pretty much written this one out for you as well. I've written out the description of it. You can modify that description, but it gives you kind of a description of what you're expected to write in here. So you have to, let's go through that. Monitoring reports are how contractors submit a record of completed work, accomplishments, and invoices to BitNet project managers. Work completed on all tasks will be reported as part of a quarterly report. This task is written for you mostly. You need to modify it because again, this is all in italicized writing. Please provide your cost for completing the reporting requirements listed in this task. Okay, so here's the part that's written for you. Contractors will complete quarterly reports using the monitoring reporting form provided by LumCon. And where is that provided? That's going to be provided in your contract or in your subaward agreement. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. It's going to be an attachment as part of your contract. Okay. So that's where your monitoring report form is going to be provided. Okay, so let me continue to read. As part of a fully executed contract or agreement to complete reports according to the following schedule. So this table just represents a schedule for when your quarterly monitoring reports are going to be due. So the quarterly monitoring report covers January through March 31st. When is the report for that time period due? April 10th, and so on and so forth all the way down. So let's say your contract begins on, and I'm just randomly choosing this. This is not hard set. For instance, you have a contract and it started on February 1st. Okay. Well, you're going to be reporting, you're going to start your reporting in that first quarterly reporting period I've outlined here. When is your report going to be due? Oh, April 10th. But Andrew, it didn't go for a full quarter. Doesn't matter. If it begins and there was work done in that quarterly period, you're going to report for that quarterly reporting period. Okay. And if you have any questions, I'll answer those, as at the end of this. And like I said before, I've already provided the deliverables that's required for this particular task. Okay. There's a list of them. You submit your quarterly reports by the due date up here. Quarterly reports must include invoices. Okay. Uh, the invoices amounts by percentage of tasks completed in addition to the total amount being invoiced. Okay. So I know that's kind of fuzzy right now, but if you have more questions about it, we can answer it. You don't have to worry so much about that right now. This is all kind of written for you. Quarterly monitoring reports must include a narrative of summaries by task, costs by percent of task completion. Again, photo documentation that support implementation of the task, meeting notes that support implementation, and any other evidence that supports implementation of those tasks that you completed within the quarterly period. Okay. Invoices and monitoring reports must be consistent for the invoice number, reporting time period, and for the amounts being invoiced. And then finally, payments will be made upon receipt of the invoice from the contracting agency on that agency's letterhead. So that's really important. Make sure it's on your letterhead, on your agency's letterhead, accompanied by the task deliverables and monitoring report. So all of that should come to us as a package. You're going to send that to your project manager. All right. And I'm sorry I'm getting into kind of the weeds in this one. So we're gonna move on. Okay, I think we've covered that one enough. again, don't worry so much about that one for now, but you do have to include this information as a task in your proposal. And you need to develop your budget around this as one of your tasks within your proposal budget. Okay, next task is going to be final report. Okay, so the final report, it's kind of self-evident. You're going to kind of compile. The nice thing about being up to date on your monitoring reports is that that's going to help you to write your final report, right? That's kind of self-evident. That kind of makes sense, right? So you're going to, at the end of your project, you're going to be required to compile a final report. And we have a final report format. And we're going to withhold 10% of the total project for payment of the final report. That's what we're talking about here for the cost. We've already assigned the cost for the final report. And so again, this particular task is pretty much written for you already. All right, moving along. So there are two budgets we are requiring you to include in your proposal. The first one that I have here is a budget by task. So if you've gone through and you've written out all of your tasks that are going to be part of your, the steps you're taking to complete your proposal, you've already assigned costs for each one of those. That's very easy now. You're just going to compile those into a budget by task summary table. The costs that you have in your task, they should match up with your summary table. The other thing to note, they should equal the total amount you're requesting from BitNep. Hopefully that makes sense, right? It shouldn't exceed the amount you're requesting from BitNep, and it should definitely equal the amount you're requesting from BitNep. All right. Then the second type of budget we're requesting from you is a budget by category. So what do I mean by that? I've already provided you a table that has those categories in there. What kind of categories are we looking for? We're looking for like major federal categories. All right. So personnel, fringe, travel, equipment, supply. Those are the types of categories we're looking for. Okay. So I want you to break up your proposal into these categories. All right. Many of you have already submitted proposals for grants, and they require you. This is usually the type of budget that are required for those types of proposals. And again, the total should equal the amount you're requesting from BitNep. Budget justification for each of your category, the budgetary categories you have in these federal categories, go through and write a justification for each of those categories. All right. Hopefully that's pretty obvious, but we have some explanation here if that's not making sense to you. The next section is a milestones table. So we want you to make a table that is going to list your milestones on the as rows, on the left side, and then across columns on the top, you would list months. Okay. So we want you to give us timelines for when you're going to complete your major milestones. What do I mean by major milestones? For most projects, it's going to be the same thing as your tasks. Now, you might have other milestones in there that are in addition to your tasks. You might have to do some other things besides that are outside of tasks, okay, in order to complete the project. But most of the time, it's going to be exactly the same. The milestones are going to be the same as your tasks. Okay. So So what we want, it's going to look like, oh, task 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to say task 10, for example. And then across the top, let's say if you're working on a 320 project, what's the maximum number of months you're going to be working on it? Oh, 24 months. So there shouldn't be more than 24 months, 24 columns for that. Okay. And then you're going to go through and put in like an X or something like that to show when you're going to complete each of those tasks. There might be a range of X's or a range of time. You might do it by color. There's all sorts of variability that you can use for that. All right, then the next section is BitNut CCMP action plans addressed. Just go to our website and find 3, no more than 3 action plans that you're going to be implementing as part of your proposal. Next section, list long-term outcomes. List and describe all of the long-term outcomes of your proposed project. All right. And then finally, the last thing we're asking for is EPA strategic plan. So go to this website that's listed here and list all of the strategic goals and objectives that you will be addressing in your proposal. So I know this seems like a lot, and it's involved, but many of these things are requirements that we're required to do by EPA. And so, this is probably the most efficient way to do this is to have you guys submit this as part of your overall project proposal, your project ideas. All right, so does anyone have any questions at this point in time? I'm going to stop sharing, and if we need to go back to that, we can. Any questions on what I presented today?
Hey, this is Donna from CRCL. And so I was wondering if you could tell us for the, the de minimis rate has changed recently for some grant applications, but not for others. Can you tell us if there's a difference in the 2 funding sources and what the de minimis is allowed?
Well, we don't put any limit on what you charge as indirect, okay? So that's up to you. That's up to your agency. What if you have a NICRA agreement or whatever, you can use whatever indirect rate that you use as an agency. If you want to use the de minimis rate, you can. Um, Whatever the current de minimis rate is, which I think is what, 15% or so right now. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. That is allowed. We don't have a hard fast rule on whatever indirect rate you're going to use. That's
Thank
going to
you.
be dependent upon your agency submitting the proposal.
But Andrew, it's the de minimis rate is the same for both funding sources, Donna, and it's the new rate. It's 15%.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I
that's
appreciate that.
thank you for that question, Donna. I appreciate it.
I had a question about matching funds, Andrew.
Okay.
It sounds like they're not required, but
That's correct.
encouraged. Is there any restriction on what kind of match source for those matching funds that you use? Like, where that money comes from, I guess, that would prohibit it being used as a match.
Yeah, so we are using the term matching very loosely in this regard because for 320 and BIL funds, match is not required. Okay. But where the matching funds will help you is in the ranking process. When the action plan team is evaluating your project relative to another project, that's where the matching funds will help you. So there is really, we're not going to limit you on where those matching funds come from. If you're working with, these are federal funds that you're requesting as a submitter, And if you have other federal funds, that already shows that you've been working on some other component of a larger project, and you're submitting for money for another component of this larger project. Uh, we're not going to say, oh, well, these are other, he's using other federal funds to match these federal funds. We're not holding that against you. You can submit that as matching funds.
Got
Hopefully
it.
that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Another great question. Thank you, Dove. Yeah, we have almost another, I mean, technically we have another 25 minutes or so. So you know, I must have spoke fast. I usually drag it out to the bitter end. So please feel free to ask any questions at all if you have any other questions. Now's the time. All right. Well, I guess if there are no more questions, we can go ahead and end the webinar.
Hey, Andrew, I would just, I know you mentioned it, but I would just reiterate that there will be a second webinar in January. I think that
Thank
is
you.
the date 29th. So as folks, have a chance to look at the solicitation, obviously some questions will probably come up. So there will be another bite at the apple. We'll have a very similar webinar to this one held at the end of January. So just know that that's coming up as well.
Yeah, so what we would ask is, please look carefully at the solicitation, consider what we presented this morning, go off and work on your proposals, and then maybe check back in, if you come up with some questions in the meantime, check back in during the January webinar, and hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions at that time. All right, if that's all, we will go ahead and end the meeting. And thank you all for attending our webinar. Just want to say that you're the reason, this is how our program works, is through these proposals and through the support of all of you attending these webinars and being partners with us at BitNet. All right. Well, y'all have a great day. Y'all take care.
Thank you so much.